to project. Can people hear me, or would you rather I put it up here and used it? And what's okay for whoever might be recording? Yes, let's not all.
Use the
Okay,
mic
good.
because like a lot of these people have hearing aids that don't work.
No problem. I can do it either way. I moved this to the second slide because I figured as long as we were doing advertising for the moment, I would acknowledge the people who've helped me. Stephen Drew's been very helpful. Gee, where have we heard that before? That's kind of been mentioned. People like Brian Norton, Mike Collins helps me by irritation and help. Dennis Burke, many others have helped me, particularly the Southern Pacific Narrow Gauge Historical Society. And then many of you may have known Jim Saylor. He was a generous soul. He did a wonderful living history of Mr. Yarrington and brought him very much to life. Mimicked beautifully his, he was not hard of hearing, Jim was not hard of hearing, but did a good job of portraying Yarrington as he got older and was hard of hearing. He was a great person whom we miss greatly, but he's no longer with us. I'll go back to who I am, Linda Clements, in case you didn't catch that. Now, I tend to wander around, although I do appreciate Tom putting me at the very end of the conference. So when you fall asleep, I'm going to blame the fact that Tom put me at the very end of the conference. So that is, so I've got a built-in excuse. I really appreciate that. Of course, historic Dayton. I first want to make my pitch again. I am, yes, I am a transplant. I've lived in Dayton about 21 years. Came from the Bay Area, originally from Arizona, but been in the Bay, was in the Bay Area for 30 years. But I'm a real Dayton supporter. We, as Ron James kindly pointed out, and others, and Ryan Hutchins pointed out, we are the oldest settlement in Nevada. Genoa's the oldest town, but we can prove 3 weeks on them, and we'll take it. And as Ron said, if they say, but you were the rowdy old miners that settled Dayton and they didn't intend to stay, and we brought good solid folk in here, and just because they didn't stay, you shouldn't get the prize. And I say, sure, we're rowdy, but we'll still take being there first. We can document continuous settlement by 1851. So many people, however, have no idea that Dayton was that historic, and they also don't realize that we had a couple of railroads in town. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, we had 2 railroads. The first was the short line Dayton, Sutro, and Carson Valley. Exactly when it ceased operation is unclear. I've been told Myrick kind of indicated it was earlier on, but I have some documents that I got on eBay that show Joe Douglas having things shipped to him there in the early 1900s. So what was he having things shipped to him at the Douglas Mill on the, so he could use and things for his railroad if it was closed. So there's some more research to be done. And then you may have heard of the Carson in Colorado. I think Brian Norton may have mentioned it. It's a significant mining railroad. Now, I like the Carson in Colorado because the V&T, bless our beautiful, in this case, older sister, or as Dayton says, Virginia City, our gorgeous and spectacular younger sister. That was the elite railroad. We were the working class town, and we had the working class railroad through there. Grading started from Mound House in May 1880 with track laying beginning late that year. Sometime between November 14th and November 30th, the tracks reached Dayton. Yay! And that's the way the residents felt. There's the actual route. I think Brian Norton may have mentioned this by mentioning it. Started up here in Mound House and ended up in Keeler. Now, of course, Carson in Colorado, you know that isn't what they originally intended. They intended to go to Colorado. But mines and claims and things kept opening up. And so, being practical people, you may have heard of those guys. I think Ron James this morning and Brian Hutchins reviewed some of the background. They were practical people. They went where the money was. And stole it. No, I didn't say that. Dayton was really fairly critical to the beginning in railroad province since we had mills. We admittedly by then had only a couple of operating mills, but these were mills that could process the ore that was being discovered down south before people could manage to build the mills down there. Now, of course, that tells you right now Dayton's going to see a bust, because what happens when they get the mills built down south? But hey, who's looking? Boom bust cycle. Free passenger service began January 8th, 1881. The freights were the first paid traffic on the 28th of January, 1881. And paid passenger service, quite a shock to everybody who liked the idea of riding for free, began March 10th. The very first rides were from Dayton. For those of us at Dayton, I was kind of not there, but close. I showed up right after that. They began, and they just went through Churchill Canyon. In our area, the grading and so forth was done by Occidental crews. As soon as they got to Churchill Canyon, after swearing they weren't going to use Chinese, as soon as they got to Churchill Canyon, people couldn't see what they were doing. Of course, it was done by Chinese crews. So the mills got busy again. Dayton started booming again. Things were good. Now, the depot was important. First of all, she was the first on the line, and she was the pattern for all subsequent of the original Carson, Colorado depot. But as befits the grande dame of the CNC depot, she holds today certain mysteries about her origin and her life. Now, we have always believed, until the irritating people from the VMT started bringing up reality, that our depot was built on site there in Dayton, and we have a lot of newspaper stories to that effect. However, there's a bunch of other stories that we weren't seeing because it was related to VMT documents that were saying that the warehouse from Mound House was moved in there and turned into the depot. John brought some evidence with us today, and we'll have it tomorrow, where what the answer is based on it, but some boards from the depot. We did have the unusual fact of having milled battens on our board and bat structure, not something you saw anywhere else on the CNC, so I don't know what that means, but it's cool. We've got the layers of original paint on some of the boards that we have. Whether that inside layer is the very liver red of a VMT warehouse. These are things that I work in aerospace, and I have a lot of people who owe me at the university, so we may do some chemical analysis here and see if it tells us anything. So that evidence indicates that it was the warehouse that was moved in when they started working on that transfer point in Mound House. So Stephen Drew nicely lays out some of the evidence each way. I'll review some of it. Your assignment tonight, if you're coming out to Dayton tomorrow, even if you're not, read the book. Read what Stephen puts there so you know a little bit more about background from somebody who's not sitting there brainwashed in Dayton. Anyway, we all have to get together and admit something. There's a reason we're in this room. We love a mystery. We love a mystery. It makes us really upset if there's no chance of ever solving it. Then it's not fun anymore. What we like is the fact that we don't know something, but we might be able to figure it out. We might be able to do it ourselves. We might be able to put our heads together collectively, but we might find out. And that's what keeps us going. You need intermittent reinforcement, right? But the piece of information could be at any turn. And we hope during reconstruction of the depot to find evidence to help us establish yea or nay. We're working slowly on the reconstruction because you need money, but we're hoping that some will be forthcoming very soon. And then there's always a possibility that we'll find the document. Knowing the CNC, I doubt it. Nothing's ever that definitive. But maybe the whole pile of documents, piece by piece, that we assemble will eventually answer this mystery. And if we can't answer it, oh, well, we'll keep looking. So here are some of the evidence. And I'm not doing too well in keeping this thing at a normal level. The VMT rural depots, and both the Dayton depot and the VMT rural depots had board and batten construction, and they had an agent's area and a larger freight room. Now, we did have milled battens. They had kind of an OG edge on the battens. They didn't do that again with the Carson, Colorado. Why a utility railroad would put in a depot with nicely milled battens Someone did suggest to me, maybe that's what was readily available, left over from construction somewhere else, I don't know. But the later depots were all, you put the batten on it, had square edges, you just stuck it on there. But ours started out with milled battens. By 1875, the V&T was building depots at least with a freight room, and what I don't know about your V&T structures has already filled many books that I haven't read. So, you know, this is just stuff that people like Stephen Drew, Mike Collins, and others have been irritating me with. They were building depots with a freight room at a higher level than an agent's area, which is how the Dayton depot was constructed. When you go over there tomorrow, it's not like that at the moment, because when it was turned into a residence, initially they kept it with this walk up into what became the living room. But when they moved it to get out of the middle of, actually it's just on the edge of Highway 50, the new owner lifted the area that is the kitchen, which was the passenger depot. So that won't be obvious to you, but when you look underneath, it's obvious. And lumber, of course, was not plentiful on the Comstock, although we had lots of lumber in Dayton because we had these massive wood drives that came in. It was one of our ways of making money, our wood drives. But still, you didn't waste lumber on the Comstock, but we did have a lot of wood in Dayton. So it was not uncommon to move entire buildings. The path between Mountain House and Dayton in 1881, however, was challenging. The freight roads all went up and over. You heard about the grade on the original CNC. And in fact, when they standard gauged, those grades had to be changed. They were steep both coming out of Mountain House Station, up the hill to the higher level there, and they were challenging coming down into Dayton in particular. Mountain House is at 5,000 feet. We're at 4,300 feet, 4,360 in Dayton. So there was a climb. There was going to be a climb there. It's such on today's Highway 50 that if you come in there on the appropriate conditions, your ears pop going down that hill, which is always a shock and an irritation to even those of us who've lived here for a long time. Now, moving in one piece would be kind of tough. We've never found any evidence of disassembly and reassembly in our depot. When Chester Martin moved it, he moved it in one piece. So we found no evidence of it ever being disassembled and assembled, but you know, we haven't torn the whole thing apart. Be patient, we're getting to that. The earliest paint layers in the depot should reveal this, and that's what I said. John brought some pieces that were in the attic. There is more evidence there that once we start removing the extra rooms, we'll have a good look at what was the outside of the depot. We have siding on the remaining outside walls. They're on the outside, and they removed the battens to apply that. It also protected it. But where they didn't have to remove the battens, it's there. And it's there with original paint coats on it. So, now the newspaper accounts of the day clear everything up, just like the newspaper always does. The Lyon County Times on January 29, 1881, the erection of the depot at Dayton will begin next week. It will be the same size as that of the Mountain House. And it was called the Mountain House back then. On February 19th, the large warehouse now at Mountain House will be removed to Dayton as soon as the road is open to traffic. Well, that's clear. Territory Auto Prize, April 20th. The V&T Railroad Company will build a large, elegant passenger depot at the Mountain House and remove the present building to Dayton. I'm glad you're clarifying this for me. Lyon County Times, May 7th. The new station house is well underway and will be completed sometime next week. Wow, this is getting clearer every minute. Lyon County Times, May 22nd. The carpenter work on the CNC Railroad Depot is now completed and is now ready for a coat of paint. Well, of course, that could be as they revised it from the warehouse, so who knows what that one tells you. So, it's a wonderful mystery yet to be revealed. Restoration, as we continue, should help us with this, and we're looking forward to that. Shameless advertisement. Any of you who are close enough to be involved or far enough away to be involved with support or far enough away to get sucked here to help us, we're looking for people to help us do this restoration. We have a good group of volunteers, but as people have aged, quite honestly, most of the people in our group that are very enthusiastic are not knowledgeable. You'll see on some of the items we have for sale that are left over from railroad days tomorrow, how that's illustrated, because people have more enthusiasm than understanding, but they're learning. And we could use railroaders who have some long time background in railroads. We have some people that have long-time background in railroads, but not in this era. We have a conductor, for example, that's part of our organization. We had another train man involved, but he's passed away. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our depot in people and pictures, because I'm always, our curator of history for our organization wanted me to give a talk in May, and she wanted very much for me to emphasize the people. And sure, we know about the big guys, but what about the little guys? What about the station agents and the section foremans and the laborers? So I did quite a little bit of work and got really excited about some of the things I found and the people I got to know. Our first Dayton agent, and here's where Stephen Drew knew stuff. He knew stuff and shared his stuff with me generously to give us a much better picture of the people who were part of our depot. William Henry McKillis, otherwise also known as Henry or Harry Cobb, was our first agent. He was originally from Maine. He was a hotel clerk for his parents, or they had a hotel. They did a lot of things themselves, but they were at the time in Glenbrook on the lake, and he had been a hotel clerk. He'd previously been a V&T agent, so he was 28, and he took the job in May 1881, which one newspaper article said was when the depot was going to be done, or not. In 1885, he was paid $100 a month for working 7 days a week. Cheap at half the price. He likely married soon after becoming agent, both he and his wife, and we don't know who this lady was. We know very little about her. They cleverly missed all the extant censuses, so we don't know her first name. They were active in the community. She shows up a lot, but as Mrs. Henry Cobb. We don't know first name, no idea who she was or where she came from. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate between those people and some other things. This is a typical schedule. Now this one you start here. This is the Northern Road, so it's the Bodie and Candelaria Express. So here, starting toward Candelaria to Mound House, or going the other direction from Mound House to Candelaria. Now by this point, they weren't making it a one-day trip, and that was what is the old and probably apocryphal quote about goes 300 miles. It's either built 300 miles too long, or 300 miles too long, or 300 years too soon, and also that it there's something about, but anyway, it takes all 2 days to get there. But when you hear about people staying in Hawthorne and you read some of the diaries, you're like, yeah, it sounds pretty plush. Not.
The railroad that went from nowhere to nowhere stopped all night to think it over.
Thank you, Brian. I knew I was hoping you could pull that one out. There's not a lot of inaccuracy there. It connected with somewhere. Now, Henry Cobb, he resigned in April 1887, so he was only here like 6 years. Perhaps, however, sadly, his wife, who they had 4 children. The last one was born, definitely, because we have an age for that one, was born after they left. And the other one that Stephen pointed out to me, Alma, I don't remember when she was born. So, but it turns out 3 of those 4 children died, and Mrs. Cobb, whoever she was, apparently descended into very, very serious mental illness. The person appointed to replace him was Wallace W. Coffin, age 21. He started in May 1887. Now, Cobb did remain active in lodge work, and sadly enough, he's also had a assistant at the Mint job. His father had some background. He had relatives that had been at the Mint for various things. But sadly, he died of spinal meningitis in 1894 at an age of only 41. And people from all over Reno, Carson City, Dayton, etc. came to his funeral because he was well known, well respected. But he left a 2.5-year-old son who went off with his wife's brother or brother-in-law in California. We don't know his name. We don't know what happened to that child, whether he ever I've never been able to find a cob. So, so we're now looking at this during roughly this time. This is really after Coffin would have been our station agent. This is the Carson and Colorado Railroad in about 1890. Now the reason I say that is because there was a spur to the Rock Point Mill that existed from 1888 to 1893. And in here, you see that spur. So it was still there, heading over to the Rock Point. The Douglas Mill is actually right over in here below the nose of this hill. This guy who was down the photographer's assistant, looks like he's looking down the hill, but when you blow that up from the original, that person's looking at you. We in fact went and stood up there and walked all over that hill till we got the mountains right and took this panorama in modern day. And this in here is where the current Dayton Airport is. That's the Randall Ranch. The line goes out, it comes in from Mound House over here. I think I better move. I am flirting with not hitting the edge of that. So the line comes in over here, actually here, below the nose of this hill. It goes to the depot, crosses the river, goes over this way, and then actually there was a Randall sighting. We assume we have the sign for it at our museum, and it was in here somewhere, and then it heads off down to Churchill Canyon. There are a series of small trestles in here, and the big trestle over the river. This was always having problems. This was having problems. You see this little meander? That's the old path of the river at one time. The dredge was always over here working. In here, you still see, this is where a lot of the, in the summertime, the timber drives. This was a pond for the timber drives. It really came right up much closer, and that's a very broken area over in there, but it's not river anymore. This is long filled in. But this railroad in here was crowded between this meander and the hill here. And here is the depot. Now, I do like to point out not only the route over to Churchill, the trestles in this area, the depot, the section foreman's house, it's still there. The station agent's house is still there. They've been modified, but they're there. And the owner who uses them as rental housing has said that when we're ready to move them, he'll talk to us. He said about, maybe giving us a good deal. Actually, he talked about giving them to us, but he works awfully hard for his money. We'll see. And then there's a cow. I want you to make sure you notice the cow. We have been looking for that cow. Haven't seen the cow. You can also see some of the details of the yard there. A little more close up. Once again, our friend, the cow. Very important. So you can see there's a little rural around there. Now here's a view from the south side of the river. That's from the north, from Cemetery Hill, or below the nose of Cemetery Hill. This is from the south side of the river. This is one of the few views we have in the day of the other side of the depot. There's the depot. Oh, there's, big surprise, there's the dredge. Up over here, and this is already a close-up, is the Douglas Mill, one of our operating mills, some of the buildings in Old Town Dayton that are still there. This is too close. Somebody throw this podium out. So there's the depot in the, about in 1890 we figure. How's that? The Douglas Mill shows that it's quite active at the time. That's why we can estimate that. And here is the spur to the Rock Point. What happened when you got there? The CNC spur went up and actually, you don't want to, it transferred to ore carts in here, and it seemed to have a siding. And this is the Dayton, Sutro, and Carson Valley going across there. They did not connect. They just flirted with each other. They connected on the Carson City side of our depot, where they actually, there was the siding to the Douglas Mill. But here, they just said hi to each other. And this, the ruins of the Rock Point, or the Stevenson, or there's a bunch of names, are still there. The Nevada Reduction Works, the ruins of the Douglas Mill, or the Lion Mill, it was mainly called the Douglas, are still on the hillside there. Although the Rock Point is part of the state park, and there's a lot of information there. And the remnants of the mill pond are there. Now, this is a terrible picture. It wasn't that bad a picture, except I've got a Xerox, so excuse me, but it happened to be what I have. I need to go up spring to buy a copy of the original from the Nevada Historical Society. But this is from the Douglas Mill, and we see the depot. The dredge, my gosh, who would have ever expected it? Various buildings, the copy I have telling whether that spur is still around, who knows? This says that it is 1894, so it should have just been removed recently. Herman Davis, Captain Herman Davis, who owned the Rock Point at the time, took out the spur and built a cyanide plant up right in front of today's pizza factory, if that makes you cheered, in the middle of Highway 50, that he used to create the cyanide for his mill. Now, Mr. Coffin, our second agent, he had a wife, Emma, and 4 children. They lived in the station agent's house near the depot. By 1899, we find also in the section foreman's residence, Foreman Clarence E. King with wife Mary and 3 girls. And nearby, we find him there on the rolls by the 1890 census, of course. They lost it, too bad. We can find some interesting information. But there were Chinese laborers that lived nearby. We see that. Whether they were on that property, there were some, in later years, there were some small kind of, not exactly shacks, but looked like real railroad buildings that were in that general area. So there may have been housing for some of even the laborers. Now, before 1900, just to the Mountain House side of the depot, we have this picture. It shows very nicely the Douglas Mill here. It shows this narrow gauge engine approaching. Right in this area, these may have been CNC buildings because certainly later information shows that there are some Southern Pacific buildings in that area. Even farther down, there was a bunkhouse down there. But the water tank would have been right in here, the SP water tank, and as you can see, they haven't built it yet because this is before the SP purchased the property. This is what we assume. It was before they built the water tank, that's for sure, and before they standard gauged it. There are some Lamoth boxcars sitting on the siding to the right. And Lamoth or Lamoth, I've heard both. Anybody, I heard Brian say Lamoth? Yeah, don't all speak at once. Okay.
My wife was here, she could tell.
Oh, good, well, I mentioned the Douglas Mill.
It's probably
Lamoth. Okay. I like the pronunciation better. It seems much more exciting. You know, like when I lived in the Bay Area, we called it Mill Patos. It's still Milpitas because it made it sound more exotic. Not how you pronounce it. Okay, so here's a close-up from that. So sometime after the SP purchase, whoops, yeah, do that. That works. They built the water tank right about in here. It's a good place for it because there's water readily available in there. Now, by then, you'll notice, this is around, just before probably 1900. This in here earlier was still that meander. So now it's getting filled in, and we had a woman pass away last year who was born in 1923, and her father, in fact, got busy filling in some of the other meanders that were left from various excursions of the river in years past, and creating orchards and things like that. People, once the dredge got through, you had fertile ground there before you started filling it in. And, as the Comstock declined, things started to change. In March 1900, the founders sold the Carson, Colorado to the SP. This was the time where the founders that were left of the V&T didn't quite maybe make the right decision, because right after that was the Tonopah Silver Strike. And within the first year, the SP made back their $2,750,000 investment. Of course, a lot of those founders, those original founders, had passed away by then, and those rolled in the graves, I assume. Now there was this stiff leg derrick was built, yeah, well, I'm an engineer, I ain't got no grammar. So it was built by the SP. It stayed busy, and you do see pictures of this derrick in operation. It would be just on the other side, or even in 50, Highway 50 today. and you can see some of the bits of the Douglas Mill. The Douglas Mill extended over quite an area. There are a lot of buildings there. So we're kind of on the Mound House side for most of what we can see, and some of these other pictures we've kind of been on the Dayton side. Now, agent number 3-ish. Coffin left Dayton in about 1900, 1903, going to Candelaria with the CNC, and then working for, or the SP, well, no, it was Nevada and California, excuse me, as they renamed it, and then working for the V&T. In 1920, he retired because he was old enough. He was in his 60s and moved to Oregon. So the next agent we can document, and by we, I mean Stephen Drew, is W.J. Church. That's a royal we. I've been looking for this for these guys. He reports that Church was previously with the V&T, the CNC, and Candelaria. So there seemed to be an exchange going with Candelaria here. He might not have been in Dayton until 1905, and if Coffin left Dayton by 1903, did we have a mystery person in there? We got some signatures in the attic. We don't know who they were or when they might have been there. So was there a mystery agent? I'll call him Agent 2B, because he wasn't there very long. Or maybe we had a fill-in, who knows? Or maybe Church showed up in 1903. More mysteries. So now here, just before they converted to standard gauging, here is a really horrible picture. This is a larger picture, and our copy that we have in Dayton has been damaged and altered. This is the best I can do out of what we've got left of a close-up. But you see, this is back for a long time. They tended to have helpers, especially before they standard gauge. They did straighten out the line some between Mound House and Dayton when they standard gauge, but that was a steep climb out of there, and it was actually not bad going. There was more of a drop again as you went into Mound House. So I'm looking at what I can't tell. I see smoke coming from two places, but there's also this, which is either a whole bunch of birds flying straight out at us, or where they spilled coffee on this. So were there two engines there? What in the heck am I seeing? That's as good as I can give you. But this is after 1900, because there, is the round SP water tank. But it's before, this is actually June 1904. We did find a date on a really awful copy one of our members had, one of our founders had. But there's information there if we only had a good copy of it. Now the bottleneck in Mound House just became too much for the SP. They started standard gauging the CNC to speed the transfer of freight from the V&T. As they did, the standard narrow bottleneck moved farther and farther south. Standard gauging passed through Dayton on December 3rd, 1904, and according to one of our members whose father was around at that time, it was a happy time. People thought, whoa, we got standard gauge now. In spite of the decline of the Comstock, things were looking good for Dayton. Their mines to the south, they definitely still needed our mills. The Rock Point was active when the Douglas Mill gave up, unclear. And here happens to be a picture that came out of Myrick, among many other places, or Myrick reproduced. It shows the Semaphore train order board. This copy is faded out in this version, but it's there. They also show, as he pointed out, that they've thrown gravel over the house track, because guess what happens if you pull a standard gauge boxcar on that house track? It takes the roof of the depot off. And eventually they got around to trimming this roof, and others, but exactly when that occurred is unclear. I do know that by January 1907 it wasn't trimmed. So they got to solve the roof problem. They got a roof problem here. Now, as I said, people thought things were going pretty well in Dayton then, in spite of the typical boom bust. Things were passing through Dayton, it looked good, and then the SP got sick and tired of negotiating with you people, the V&T, to try to get some blaming on you personally. I want you to know this. The V&T, they thought they could get the V&T to sell out to them. When they couldn't do it, they said, we'll go around you. And they did. They put in the haze and cutoff. It was The grading began in May 1905, and the cutoff opened on August 31st. And all of a sudden, Dayton, which was happy and doing well, was in a cul-de-sac. There was, after 24 years of CNC-induced prosperity, Dayton was now in a cul-de-sac of the old CNC. Service was drastically reduced. Mail still arrived on a once daily train, but there was almost no through traffic. So this was a bit of a catastrophe for Dayton. In fact, it was more than a bit. And later on, that service was cut further to 3 times a week. Then, to add insult to injury, in March 1907, the CNC roadbed was badly damaged in the whole Dayton area. The river trestle was destroyed. That's pretty destroyed, folks. It took out both the railroad and the toll bridge that was over the road bridge, which was a toll bridge. Actually, Bolivar Roberts, this was not, you'll see in some references that the Bolivar Roberts toll bridge was taken out, but 1881 they took out the railroad bridge right about the time the CNC was starting to operate, and the Bolivar Roberts toll bridge went out then. So this was a subsequent one, but it was removed very carefully in 1907. It was, however, a semi-covered bridge, so you can tell by pictures, was a pre-1907 or post-1907 by whether the road bridge had some covering or sides to it. There's a lot of damage in the Dayton area. This is a picture we've looked at. Someone got hold of it, got hold of it and labeled it funny. It says after the flood in 1906, which is interesting because the bridge didn't go out in 1906. So apparently, I think they waited till 1907 to take this picture, but the photographer took it in the future. But when I examined this picture that we know well in Dayton, I discovered, ta-da, the depot. So there is the only picture we have when it was on service of the Keeler end of our depot, believe it or not. If anybody comes up with one, I'd love to see it. We have a few after we shut down, but not then. And notice that January 1907, well, you may not be able to tell in this, but I can tell when I examine it carefully, the roof was not trimmed. The problem was the SP's like, we're going to build a bridge for a cul-de-sac. We don't know if we want to bother. Maybe we'll just let it be cut off. That, of course, did not make the people of Dayton very happy. So there was harassment against the SP. And finally, in about May, I don't know when exactly, they started rebuilding the bridge. And by June, they had both a new road bridge and a new trestle. And you'll notice that this is not covered or anything on the road bridge. I'm not sure whether this may be a mark of, Bernie Allen found it somewhere, he found a physical copy of a picture that showed a sign hanging that said maximum speed limit on the road bridge, 5 miles an hour, and it was tolled. But he doesn't know where he got it. Now he doesn't know what he did with the photocopy. So there's more information hiding out there, waiting for me to find it.
Linda?
Yes, sir.
Was it a toll bridge, do you know?
It was, Bolivar Roberts Bridge was a toll bridge, and they were given by the legislature permission to erect that toll bridge in the 1860s, and to them and their descendants. So in the 1880s, the road bridge may still have been tolled, and whether it was after 1907, I don't think, but I'm not sure because, I mean, in all my spare time, I haven't researched that thoroughly, but it's one of those 1,003 questions I have in my list of things to find out. When did we stop having a toll bridge? Did Bolivar Roberts' family get run out of the country? I mean, because I think there was a real, I suspect the one after that was washed out in 1881 remained a toll bridge still. Now, I say that this picture was taken by the cow. It's where, it was taken roughly from where that cow was. And it shows that, look, that's a train. Look, it's going across the bridge. See, it works. That's about all it. And here's a picture that Stephen has on the front of his booklet. In 1907, the Dayton Depot was painted brick red with white trim, and it had a green shingle roof. And that was, the green shingles were something that we didn't realize. We are going to take it back to 1881, roughly. I mean, 1880s character. And so we got to research. Those shingles, we believe, are still under. Is that right, John? We think the shingles are still under our tin roof on top. So we'll know things. We're not going to reuse them. There's something about fire. But we're going to reuse something that looks a lot like them. The train order, semaphore, and roof awning depot signs at each end of the depot were added by the HSP. We may make a sacrifice to what people expect and put up a Dayton Depot sign on the depot with a big sign that says, "This is not original," because everybody thinks of our depot with that sign that was added by the SP. So we'll think about that. Those of you who are perfectionists and purists can argue with me, because I'm kind of a closet purist myself. So the fourth, if we ignore agent 2B, James F. Blakey was our next agent. Church didn't stay long. If it wasn't for Stephen Drew, we would know almost nothing about him. We don't know much. On June 1st, 1909, James F. Blakey, basically church came in after the census and left before the next one. On June 1st, 1909, James F. Blakey painted his name, the date, and the word agent high on the walls of the open freight room. And for those of you who come tomorrow, John Crowley over here, who's supposedly related to me by marriage, will be leading depot tours, as will our tiny little 6'4" son, to give you an idea of depot attic tours. And I'll be the ground group, and as well as some of our members. But he'll be taking people up there and show you some of those. Some of you have probably seen them, but we've dug out a little bit more with removing some of the insulation and stuff up there. Blakey got married in May while working for the railroad in Mina, and thus was brand new in Dayton when he signed his name. So this could have been when he first started. And the SP finally got around to trimming the roof. Now, others may have more information, but we have this picture from 1914. And Stephen tells me they trimmed the roof twice. They got it small enough, back enough, that the boxcars wouldn't hit it, and then they started building bigger boxcars. And so they had to trim it again. And they actually had to move that semaphore back, because they didn't get it far enough back either. Blakey was our longest serving agent. I'm sure when they arrived in 1909, he and his bride, the former Hallie M. Reinhold of Los Angeles, probably never suspected they would be in Dayton for lots of years.
Reinhardt.
Yeah, like it says there, Reinhardt.
Kind of like this one.
You know a guy named that, huh? Well, yeah. Check with him, would you? Their son Miller was born in 1916 and went to school here through high school. And in fact, we recently found in the attic up there an autograph book that was lost by, I'll show you, the family, in fact, was lost. That was her high school autograph book, and it was lost by a person who later lived in the depot before it was moved. And it got buried in the insulation. We found it up there, and we've got a autograph from Miller. And the boys and girls put very routine, roses red, flowers are blue, when you are gone, we'll miss you, or roses red, violets, sometimes a little variation. And some of the boys got silly. Teenage boys got silly. They were fun. They have some fun autographs in there, but most of them are moderately boring because they're very stylized. But the Blakeys also were active in the community, and it was opined to me that, in fact, probably like many employers, the SP and the CNC encouraged their employees to get active where they were, so that the community supported them and were happy they were there. And the Blakeys were quite active in the community, and he turned out to be Dayton station agent for almost 26 years. In fact, there's a cute newspaper story that I like about the men of the community cooking dinner for their wives, and he was one of the cooks. However, by now the SP's like, what is this good for? We wanna start closing some of these lines down, they're not profitable. And they work their way back, eventually closing everything but the remnant line in the Owens Valley. After 2 years of arguments and Dayton pleading that they didn't know how they were gonna fund, they funded their schools from the property taxes paid by the SP. So this was quite a blow when they actually closed it for good. April 25th, 1934, they closed it, 1934, they closed it down. The tracks were removed in 38, and Dayton scrambled to try to figure out how to fund the schools. And in fact, they managed to keep the high school going into the 50s, but eventually closed it, and the students came to Carson for some time, and then eventually, now there was the boom before the bust again, and we have lots of schools in Dayton. Once it was closed, they got out of Dodge to Utah, where he continued to work as a railroad agent in Box Elder County. In 1940, they were still there with their 23-year-old son Miller, who was still living with them. Where they went from there, I have not as yet tracked. The 1940 census is the last one online, and then it becomes more challenging at 3 in the morning when you can't go to sleep because you're so hyper from working. It's not as easy to go research the census. They just don't let me in the archives. So what did Depot do? Well, for quite a while she sat and waited. She's good at that. She's shown a lot of patience with us. She waited some more. And then, guess what? A family moved in. I am not, and this is, I told you, Hart, I have one of your pictures in here. Hart's exchanged a lot of information with me. We don't know exactly, we think maybe as early as 1940 or early 1940s it was occupied, but the first pictures we have are from 1949. Who owned it first, I'm not sure, but this family, and unfortunately Mom, Sparky, Hankhammer, Allingham, who probably took this picture, was the lady with the diary, high school diary, and some years later as well. Had teachers as well as students, so it was kind of fun. It was like an old home week for Dayton. And here is her husband and their children. And the oldest here died recently, but he shared with us a bunch of pictures of the depot from that period. And there you have basically the non-trackside freight dock leads into their house. At this time, you can tell the freight room's back in here, and we have the passenger area is much lower as it was originally. Now, Stephen had this. I have a really bad picture of this entire panorama, but Stephen, I stole this directly from Stephen's brochure. And this shows the depot here. Highway 50 is not through, and this shows it on the property before it was moved. It was a home at this time. What you don't see well from this angle, because it's on the tracks, had been over here, basically under Highway 50, is that roof has been trimmed. And you can see that tomorrow, very evident. So here it is before it was moved. We still don't have the exact date on which it was moved, but in about 1956, Highway 50 East came through Dayton. The depot would be in the right of the way. Actually, if you drove real careful, you could probably squeak by the back corner. The drunks would all hit it, and the tracks were, of course, under there. Many people in Dayton thought at one time that Railroad Street, which still exists today, was the yard road. And as I said, the two section foreman and station agent's house are still there, and so you can go take a look at them from the outside. The renter they've had in the station agent's house, probably if we'd made arrangements, would be happy to show you around. He's so excited. Anyway, but colorful deputy, and I mean colorful deputy, Chester Barton, he drove a pink station wagon, was his cop car. He bought the depot and moved it about a block and a half to its current location at the corner of Main Street and Highway 50 East. He had a serve station on this property as well. And Shortly thereafter, the last vestige of the CNC, the Slim Princess of Owens Valley, was closed, April 29th, 1960, after almost 80 years of operation. The last remnant was closed. And meanwhile, in Dayton, Chester Barton and his wife Helen lived in their depot home the rest of their lives with Chester's bobcat, Chico. We've got some pictures of Chico. He had a bear that he would sit in the car like he was driving it. And when you come to the depot, we have the pictures of these creatures up on the wall. They don't have any rattlesnakes. They figure people would freak. And he kept his rattlesnakes under the glass counter of a service station, said he was never robbed, oddly enough. And if you happen to read Lassault's A Man in Wheatfield, Chester was not the guy who was the hero, but the hero was patterned after Chester. Now, Chester was a much more down-to-earth guy than the guy in, the mysterious guy in there that is the hero in A Man in the Wheatfield, or the, I don't know what you call him, he was, but he had rattlesnakes. He died in 1973. He was the last deputy sheriff, he wasn't the last deputy, but he's the last person to use our firehouse jail, and he threw a local drunk teenager into it. And Helen died not until 1996, and then that depot was threatened at that point, and after a couple of different tries, we got funding from TDA 21 funds through the Nevada Department